नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे करोति वाचालं कृपातः वन्दे श्रीगुरुं। So welcome back to this Nectar of Devotion session. So today is the second week, and as you would know, we have this week and the next week to complete. So today, this week, we'll be moving a bit faster. So we will try to complete till chapter 3 today. We'll see how it goes. And just a quick recap of what all we have discussed. We started from the preface, and we discussed the preface, several points in that, where Srila Prabhupada spoke about a brief history or about the Acharya who's writing this book, Srila Rupa Goswami. And then he spoke about Bhakti, Rasa, and how it's Amrita. And then he compared it with material Rasa and spiritual Rasa. So the Rasa, topic of Rasa was introduced in preface. In introduction, the first verse we saw quite in elaborate detail. That was Akhila Rasamrita Murti. And how Krishna is mentioned as the subject matter of this book. We saw the different aspects of Mangalacharan, where we have the Vishay, the subject matter of this book, then obeisances to the Acharyas, to the spiritual masters, and then Ashirvad. So these three sections we saw. We saw the divisions of this book, and finally we saw the definition of pure devotional service. Anya Abhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadhyanavritam Anukulyena Krishnanu Shiranam Bhakti Ruttama. So these two we saw. And after that, we started with chapter 1. So chapter 1 spoke about further characteristics of pure devotional service. So when we were speaking this Anyabhilashita Shunyam verse, we discussed two characteristics, primarily Swarupa Lakshana and Tatastha Lakshana. Swarupa Lakshana is that which is the primary characteristic of devotional service, that is Anukulyana Krishnanu Shilanam. And secondary characteristic was Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadhyanavritam. So secondary are two and primary are these three. So further characteristics of pure devotional service was described in chapter 1. So we saw the first two. So this is Kleshagni, Shubhadha, Moksha Lagutakrit, then Sudurlabha, Sandrananda Visheshatma, Shri Krishna Karshini. So these are the six characteristics of pure devotional service, the secondary characteristics or further characteristics, as Srila Prabhupada writes. So we discussed about this relief from material distress, which is Kleshagni. And within that, we saw Aprarabdha Karma and Prarabdha Karma. How Aprarabdha is removed, we saw a reference for that. How Prarabdha is removed, we saw a reference for that. Then Aprarabdha and Prarabdha was again elaborated as Aprarabdha, Kuta, Bija and Falonmukha. Falonmukha is basically Prarabdha. And how that is removed. And then we also saw how the papa, the sin itself, comes from avidya, which in turn creates a sinful desire within the heart, and then one engages in sinful activity in papa. And these sinful activities are further divided into aprarabdha, prarabdha, then aprarabdha, kuta, bija, and prarabdha. So this bija is different from the bija which we discussed before, and we also saw a small diagram to make this process easily understandable for us. Then we saw how Krishna consciousness is all auspicious, right? So there are these 4 points: affection for all living entities, being attractive to all living entities, possession of good qualities, and happiness, as well as other items. So this is the translation of this verse 1:127, and then we saw how Srila Prabhupada explains that. So this section was completed, which is Krishna consciousness is all auspicious, and then we started with happiness in Krishna consciousness. So this is in relation with moksha lagutakrit. Means that happiness in Krishna consciousness surpasses or it minimizes the happiness that is derived from moksha. So moksha is considered a person in who is following Vedic culture. He engages in dharma, artha, kama, and then moksha comes. So normally the goal of life is said to be dharma, artha, and kama. Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistrigunya Bhavarjuna. It's speaking only about three gunas, which is the modes of material nature. Rajoguna, Satvaguna and Tamoguna. But Krishna asks Arjuna to go beyond that, which is the level of moksha. So dharma, artha and kama, all these three are on the level of the three modes, whereas moksha is beyond the three modes. Which means when a person has followed this Vedic culture and heart is definitely unsatisfied by following dharma, artha and kama, then he looks towards moksha to get free from the influence of these three modes. So when he gets away or when he gets beyond the influence of the three modes, then there is happiness because there is no material distress at that time. Within the three modes, there is always material distress, but beyond the three modes, there is no material distress. So he feels happy, there is some satisfaction. But that satisfaction is very, very minimal, or the satisfaction that one gets by getting relieved from material distress is very, very less. So there are some references which Sri Rupa Goswami provides for that, and that is called as and this section under which he provides is Moksha Laghutakrit. And Srila Prabhupada defines it as happiness in Krishna consciousness, because the happiness in Krishna consciousness is so intense, so nice, that it reduces the happiness that is derived from moksha. And one more thing to discuss is these 6 characteristics of Kleshagni, Shubhada, and other 6 which we've discussed about. The first 2 is attained when one engages in regulative principles of devotional service, that is Sadhana Bhakti. This is explained by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he says that the first 2 are achieved by a devotee who is in the level of Sadhana Bhakti. Then the next 2, including the first 2, means the first 4 are achieved by one who has attained the level of Bhava, or in the level of Bhava Bhakti, which means these 4. See, what are the 5, 6? This Kleshagni, Shubhada, then Moksha Laghutakrit, and Sudurlabha. So, Kleshagni and Shubhada, these 2 are attained by a person who is in Sadhana Bhakti. So, one who takes a pure devotional service, Sadhana Bhakti, he is free from all of his previous reactions. Okay. And he also it bestows all auspiciousness onto him. So he gets material prosperity as well as spiritual prosperity. So these 2 are bestowed on a devotee who takes up Sadhana Bhakti. Then the first 4, Kleshagni, Shubhada, Moksha Laghutakrit and Sudurlabha, is applicable to the level of Bhava. Means when one comes to the level of Bhava, then this moksha, or this hankering to become free from material distress, it looks very insignificant. Okay, at this point of time, those of us who are engaged in Sadhana Bhakti, for us to get free from material distress seems to be the impetus now. It's a push for us to engage in devotional service. Whenever we speak or whenever we preach, or even to ourselves, if something happens to us, we think, this material world is so miserable. We must get out of this place. The body is so miserable. Every situation is so miserable. When interacting with other people also, we face so many challenges. The person does not speak properly, or we have to bribe him, or do all these kind of different things. We think this material place is not a place for a gentleman. So that is on the level of Sadhana Bhakti, okay, where we see the material world as a place of distress. And we want to get free from that place. So the impetus is there to take up devotional service. But when one comes to the level of Bhava, then Moksha Laghutakrit, or to become free from material distress, becomes very insignificant. That is not the driving desire anymore. So Moksha Laghutakrit and Sudurlabha, and the rarity of devotional service, that is appreciated and attained at the level of Bhava. So Sadhana Bhakti is there, but then at the level of Bhava, Krishna decides to give himself to the devotee. So therefore, pure devotional service or love of Godhead is considered as Sudurlabha. It's very, very rare to attain that position of Bhava. Okay, one can take up Sadhana Bhakti, but then to come to the level of Bhava is very rare. That's why the Sudurlabha, that is applicable at the level of Bhava. So Moksha Laghutakrit, Sudurlabha, as well as Kleshagni and Shubhada. These 4 are on the level of Bhava. And at the level of Prema, all 6 are realized. Kleshagni, Shubhada, Moksha Laghutakrit, Sudurlabha, and Sandharananda Visheshatma. So Sandharananda Visheshatma means the condensed and intensified bliss. It's not only happiness in Krishna consciousness, but the intensified bliss in relationship with Krishna, in pure love of God. That is attained only at the level of Prema. And Shri Krishna Akarshani. Then Krishna is completely attracted to that devotee. So this is attained only on the level of prema. So prema contains all six, right? So if you see even the six sections, I'll just show you here. The six sections you see, it's relief from material distress, and then Krishna consciousness is all auspicious. And if you see here also happiness is given. So there is some happiness in sadhana bhakti also. Otherwise, how can we continue with devotion? Some bliss is there, some rasa is definitely there. Then the next is happiness in Krishna consciousness. It's moksha lagutakrit. So in bhava, the happiness in Krishna consciousness increases to a much more intensified stage. Then the rarity of pure devotion service, that is sudurlabha. Then happiness of becoming one with the Supreme in consciousness, ekatvam anupashyata. We discussed this before in Isha Upanishad. So happiness of becoming, this is sandrananda visheshatma, where one is experiencing intense bliss in relationship to Krishna. So happiness is mentioned in all the three stages, right? But then the intensity of happiness or that bliss which is experienced, it increases as one progresses in devotional service. So last time we discussed till 31st, and we saw the happiness. We did a comparison of the happiness in Krishna consciousness. There's material enjoyment, and then the spiritual enjoyment, which is identifying oneself with the Supreme Brahman, and then there is Krishna consciousness. So next verse did a comparison of how happiness in Krishna consciousness is eternal, whereas the other two are not eternal. Even the so-called happiness of impersonal liberation does not endure for a long time. One has to come back to this material world, even if he reaches Brahma Jyoti. Ye anya vrindakshana mukta marana tvayista bhavaya avishuddha buddhaya aruha krichena param padam tada patanti ado anagata yushmadan graya. So patanti, one has to fall down from Brahmananda. So it's not eternal. So therefore, happiness in Krishna consciousness is the topmost. Then Srila Prabhupada speaks about different types of yogic siddhis. So we just saw a little introduction on that and how foolish people are enamored with material life. Right? So today we'll continue with this 32nd verse where Srila Rupa Goswami gives quotes. He quotes from Hari Bhakti Sudodaya that Prahlad Maharaj, a great devotee of the Lord, prayed to Nrsimhadev. And he said, "My dear Lord, I repeatedly pray onto your lotus feet that I may simply be stronger in devotional service. I simply pray that my Krishna consciousness may be more strong and steady, because happiness derived out of Krishna consciousness and devotional service is so powerful that with it one can have all the other perfections of religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and even the attainment of liberation from material existence." So happiness in Krishna consciousness can provide all the benefits of other processes also. But a pure devotee does not aspire for this perfection, because the happiness derived from devotional service in Krishna consciousness is so transcendental and so unlimited that no other happiness can compare to it. And this can be experienced even at the stage of sadhana bhakti. So when one engages in pure devotional service and engaging in sadhana bhakti, at that time also this desire to attain to heavenly planets or have a very comfortable materialistic life, it gradually dwindles even on the level of sadhana bhakti. So one does not have to come to the level of bhava to experience detachment from everything which is material. Either sense enjoyment in this life or else elevation to higher planets in the next life. So all those becomes quite insignificant even on the level of sadhana bhakti. So there is happiness which cannot compare to the happiness which one can attain in heavenly planets. So if we still have some desire, now we have to, all these things are mentioned so that we can contemplate and think on which level we are. If we still have desires to go to heavenly planet, then heavenly planets means basically sense enjoyment, and we want more intensified sense enjoyment, which is possible in heavenly planets. So if we want to attain that level by performing devotional service, then we are not performing pure devotional service. So that's the point. But if we are engaged in pure devotional service activities, then this happiness of heavenly planets seems very insignificant. Devotees are not even interested. And although there are so many explanations in the Shastras, in different Puranas, in Mahabharata, that heavenly planet has so much of happiness and bliss and all, but the devotee is not attracted to that. He wants to attain the supreme planet. So that because even in sadhana bhakti, that happiness is experienced. It is said that even one drop of happiness stands beyond comparison with an ocean of happiness derived from any activity. So this is Moksha Lagutagrit. Then the last two verses is speaking about specifically how impersonal liberation becomes insignificant on the level of bhava. When even a little attraction for the Lord grows in the heart. See, this translation is not available in the book. Okay, I'm reading this only to make the subject matter clear and how Srila Prabhupada explains that. As I told last week, whatever is there in black is what Srila Prabhupada has written. Okay, and the one in this purple blue color, it's for our reference, for our study purposes only. You do not have to memorize any of these translations. Okay, it's not required. So this goes, even a little attraction for the Lord grows in the heart. The four objects of human attainment, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, becomes like grass, shameful to appear before bhakti. So any person who has developed even little quantity of pure devotional service can easily kick out all other kinds of happiness. Then Srila Prabhupada gives the example of Kolavicha Sridhar, who was extremely poor and he was sustaining himself just by selling small cups from the leaves of plantain trees, means banana trees. The leaves, and he used to make the small cups and he used to sell it. And half of it he used to, whatever he earned, half of it he used to give to Ganga and half of it he used to keep. Extremely poor. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was there, he used to play with him, he used to tease him. But once Chaitanya Mahaprabhu revealed himself to Kolavacha Sridhar that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and he wants to give some benediction to him for his intense devotional service. But what did Sridhar said? He informed the Lord that he did not want any material opulence. He was quite happy in his present position and wanted only to gain unflinching faith and devotion onto the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya. That is the position of pure devotees. If they can be engaged 24 hours, then they do not want anything else, not even the happiness of liberation or of becoming one with the Supreme. So Narad Pancharatra, it is said that any person who has developed even small amount of devotional service doesn't care a fig for any kind of happiness. Right? It is stated there. It is stated that personal attendants and maid servants of a queen follow the queen with all respects and obeisances. Similarly, the joys of religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation follow the devotional service of the Lord. Because devotional service is attractive. So everybody is attracted to devotional service. We saw that, no? When we were discussing Shubhada. Krishna consciousness is all auspicious. And the devotee becomes very attractive to everybody. And everybody becomes attracted to the devotee. Or rather, it's the same thing. So devotee becomes attractive to everybody. And then he attracts everybody also. And Krishna is also attracted like this. So devotional service attracts. So it attracts all kinds of perfections which is possible within this material world also. So what are these perfections? The perfection of religiousness. So one does not have to engage in different kinds of religious activities because all these activities are attached to bhakti. So one does not have to follow the rules and regulations very strictly of varnashrama dharma like this. Have to follow dharma. Just like dharma gives artha, and artha can be used for kama, for sense enjoyment. But one who engages in devotional service, these things are automatically attained. He does not have to follow so-called dharma. He does not have to endeavor for economic development. He does not have to hanker for sense gratification. All of these things are automatically taken care of by devotional service. Just like taking, very famous example is taking prasadam. We have, the tongue, the senses want to take nice food stuff. But what do? We offer it to the Lord and accept it as the mercy of the Lord. So sense gratification is the highest in devotional service. Prasada is so transcendental, like this. And liberation follow the devotional service of the Lord. Finally, detachment or to go beyond the three modes of material nature, to have transcendental happiness, that is also followed, or that also follows devotional service. So in other words, the pure devotee does not lack any kind of happiness derived from any source. He does not want anything but service to Krishna. And this is not the motive. His motive, a pure devotee, does not have the motive to attain perfection in dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. These are side benefits that come along with devotional service. But the main thing is just to satisfy Krishna, just to do service for Krishna. Right? So this is moksha lagudakrit. Rareness of pure devotional service, sudurlabha. So, just two things that we'll be discussing here is, bhakti is difficult to attain in two ways. If undertaken in great quantity but without attachment, Bhakti cannot be attained even after a long time. So one will not come to the level of bhava if he's just performing the rituals of devotional service but does not have any attachment or does not have any understanding of the sambandha gyan of why he's doing devotional service. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu famously said, no, Bahu Janma Kari Yadi Shravan Kirtan, Tabuta Na Pai Krishna Pade Premadhan. Even if you continue chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra for Bahu Janma, means millions and millions of lifetimes, still you will not attain love of God. Tabuta Na Pai Krishna Pade Premadhan. Still you will not attain the love of God. Because if you are cultivating or pure devotion, if you are performing pure devotion service only for other abhilashas, for other fulfilling other desires like jnana and karma, then this chanting will not produce love of God. So one must have attachment for devotional service and detachment for other things. So again, coming back to the definition of pure devotional service, anya vilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritam. That is required. Okay. Then even if practiced with attachment, Krishna does not give bhakti to the practitioner immediately. So that way also it is sudurlabha. Even if it's practiced with attachment, still Krishna waits. He does not give bhakti to the practitioner immediately. Ultimately, he'll give, looking at the sincerity of the devotee, but immediately he will not give. So Srila Prabhupada writes, in the preliminary phase of spiritual life, there are different kinds of austerities, penances for attaining self-realization. However, even if an executor is without any material desire, he still cannot achieve devotional service. So devotional service cannot be achieved by different kinds of austerities and penances or those things which are mentioned in the Vedas as pious activities or activities that a human being must perform. Devotional service can be achieved only through devotional service. The bhakti sanjayata bhakti. So bhakti comes only from bhakti. No other external process like karma, jnana, yoga, austerities, penances, they can initiate or they can trigger devotional service within the heart. Devotional service can be triggered only through devotional service. So none of these things, by executing all these different things, one cannot achieve bhakti. Aspiring by oneself alone to achieve devotional service is also not very hopeful because Krishna does not agree to award devotional service to merely anyone. So one who thinks that on his own endeavor he will become a devotee, that is also not possible. So one must take shelter of another devotee. It's a must. So one must take shelter of the spiritual master. We already saw that. Without that, one cannot expect to progress in bhakti. Krishna can easily offer a person material happiness or even liberation, but he does not agree very easily to award a person engagement in his devotional service. Devotional service can be, in fact, attained only through the mercy of a pure devotee. That is the only way. So now you see this? It's attained only. It's attained only through the mercy of pure devotee. That's the only way to take up to pure devotional service. Otherwise not possible. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita it is said, by the mercy of spiritual master who is a pure devotee and by the mercy of Krishna, one can achieve the platform of pure devotional service. There is no other way. Right? Even in Shvetashvara Upanishad it is said, Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavata Kichara. No, not this one, sorry. Is that? Yasya Deve Para Bhaktir Yatha Deve Tatha Guru Tasyaita Katita Hyarda Prakashante Mahatmanaha. So one must have faith in both Krishna as well as the spiritual master. Then one can attain or one can expect to attain perfection. Then the first type, which is rarity, the practice without attachment, is illustrated in one of the tantras. So there, Lord Shiva speaks to Sati and he says, my dear Sati, if one is a very fine philosopher, analyzing the different processes of knowledge, he can achieve liberation from the material entanglement. The performance of ritualistic sacrifices recommended in the Vedas, one can be elevated to the platform of pious activities and thereby enjoy material comforts of life to the fullest extent. But all such endeavors can hardly offer anyone devotional service to the Lord, not even if one tries for it by such processes for many, many thousands of births. So this is the reference, this is a proof of what Srila Rupa Goswami is saying here, that without attachment or if you perform any other activities, then it will not lead to pure devotional service. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also confirmed by Prahlad Maharaj that merely by personal efforts or by the instructions of higher authorities, one cannot attain to the stage of devotional service. One must become blessed by the dust of the lotus feet of pure devotee who is completely freed from the contamination of material desires. This is that verse. Matirna Krishne Paratah Svatova Paratah Swataha. So one cannot attain pure devotion. Matirna Krishna. The mind cannot be fixed on Krishna by one's own endeavor or just by pushing of somebody else. Matirna Krishna Paratah Svatova Mitobi Bhati the Grahavritanam Adanta Gobir Vishatam Tamishram Punah Punah Charvita Charvananam. And then it continues. Prahat Maharaj continues. Nade Vidu Swartha Katim Hi Vishnu Purashaya Bahirta Marina. Then Andha Yathadi Rupaniyamana Stepi Shutantram Urudamni Baddaha. Then finally he says, Naisham Matistavad Urukramangrim Prishat Anathapagamo Yadarthaha Mahiyasham Padarajobhishekam. So one must take the dust of the lotus feet of a Mahiyasham, of a pure devotee, and then smear it all over his body. And that is the only way of getting their mercy and taking up pure devotion service. So Mahiyasham Padarajobhishekum Nishkinchanaram cha Vrinita Yavat. So this is the way. So this, we start from Matirna Krishna Paratah Svatva, not from others' endeavor, from your own endeavor, you will not be able to take up pure devotion service. But when you take up the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee, Mahiyasham Pada Raja, then it is possible to take to pure devotion service. So Prabhupada summarized that in these two lines here. Then the second type of rarity, which is even if we follow devotional service practices with attachment, still it is very rare to attain Krishna's mercy. So this is from Shukdev Goswami. He is speaking to Parikshit Maharaj, 5th canto, 6th chapter, verse 18. My dear king, it is Lord Krishna, known as Mukunda, who is the eternal protector of the Pandavas and the Yadus. He is also your spiritual master and instructor in every respect. He is the only worshipable God for you. He is very dear and affectionate, and he is the director of all your activities, both individual and familial. And what's more, he sometimes carries out your orders as if he were your messenger. My dear king, how very fortunate you are, because for others all these favors given to you by the Supreme Lord would not be dreamt of. So, it's very rare to attain this kind of affection that Krishna has for his devotees. So therefore it is Sudurlabha, and others cannot even imagine. How all these favors are bestowed by the Lord to the Pandavas. The purport is that the Lord easily offers liberation, but he rarely agrees to offer a soul devotional service. Because by devotional service, the Lord himself becomes purchased by the devotee. He comes under the control of the devotee. So therefore, he will withhold himself. So what hope do we have? Our hope is the mercy of the spiritual master. And the mercy of the spiritual master or the pure devotee of the Lord is gained by how sincerely we serve the spiritual master, how sincerely we are attached, or how much faith we have in Krishna consciousness. The happiness of becoming one with the Supreme. So this is Sandharananda Visheshatma. Sri Rupa Goswami says that if Brahmananda, or the happiness of becoming one with the Supreme, is multiplied by 1 trillion fold, it still cannot compare to an atomic fraction of the happiness derived from the ocean of devotional service. It's very insignificant. In Hari Bhakti Sudodaya, Prahlad Maharaj says, my dear Lord of the universe, I am feeling transcendental pleasure in your presence and have become merged in the ocean of happiness. I now consider the happiness of Brahmananda to be no more than the water in the impression left by a cow's hoof in the earth compared to this ocean of bliss. See, in mud or in clay, when a small calf is walking, then the hoof prints are created. And when rain comes, some water is filled up. So, this happiness that one achieves by merging into Brahmajyoti, it's not even equal to, or rather it's compared to the hoof, the water that is filled in the hoof of the calves walking. But the devotional service is ocean. It is Sindhu, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So these two cannot be compared at all. You see now how much water is there in that small area, but how much water is there in the ocean. Like this. Then again there's another reference. This is Rupa Goswami speaking from Bhavartha Deepika. So Bhavartha Deepika is not actually Shastra, but actually it's commentary by Sridhar Swami. And Rupa Goswami is actually showing that the commentaries of the Acharyas also are quite authentic and authoritative. And by seeing, and this is the parampara. This is the parampara. We have Supreme Lord who has given us the Shastras, and then there is this disciplic succession that comes. But those who are in disciplic succession, who are perfectly engaged in devotional service to the Lord, who are the Mahajanas, their words also carry the same weight as Shastra. So Rupa Goswami in his work, Bhakti Rasamrita, he quotes Bhavartha Deepika, the commentary of Sridhar Swami in Srimad Bhagavatam. And one more thing which we can understand is that this writing of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu was done by the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who explained to Rupa Goswami the science of devotional service for 10 days, right, in Prayag. And he asked Rupa Goswami to elaborate these details in the book. And this one more instance where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is speaking to Vallabhacharya, and then Vallabhacharya had written some commentary on Bhagavatam. But his commentary contained something which was against what Sridhar Swami had written. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not like that. He said that whatever Swami or whatever Sridhar Swami has written, it's perfect commentary on Bhagavatam. And therefore, you should not be very proud that your commentary is better than Sridhar Swami's commentary. Which means that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu considers Sridhar Swami's commentary to be very authentic. Now, Rupa Goswami, because he is writing for the pleasure of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the principles of pure devotional service, he makes a point to quote from Bhavartha Deepika, from Sridhar Swami's commentary itself, so that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is pleased by the attempt that he is making. Right? So what is he write? He says, "My dear Lord, some of the fortunate persons who are swimming in the ocean of the nectar of devotion and who are relishing the nectar of the narration of your pastimes certainly know ecstasies which immediately minimize the value of the happiness derived from religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Such a transcendental devotee regards any kind of happiness other than devotional service as no better than straw in the street." Right? This is the condensed, intense bliss, and this is attained at the level of prema. Right? Sandhananda Visheshatma and Sri Krishna Krishna. These two are attained at the level of prema, when a devotee has attained love of God. So any other happiness that can be experienced in any of the realms, either material or spiritual, seems very insignificant to him. These things are difficult for us to understand because we do not have experience of what spiritual or transcendental bliss is, or what is being spoken about here. But on the authority of these acharyas and pure devotees, we do take that it is there. Because nothing satisfies us here. But devotional service does. Finally, attracting Krishna, Sri Krishna Krishna. So, Bhakti is called Sri Krishna Krishna because it makes the Lord addicted to his devotees' love and brings him under control along with his associates. So, pure devotional service attracts the Lord as well as his associates, as well as the pure devotees of the Lord. So, it's attractive that way. So, devotional service attracts Krishna. Krishna attracts everyone, but devotional service attracts Krishna. The symbol of devotional service in the highest degree is Radharani. Krishna is called Madan Mohan. Radharani is still more attractive. Therefore, devotees call her Madan Mohana Mohini. To perform devotional service means to follow in the footsteps of Radharani. And devotees in Vrindavan put themselves under the care of Radharani in order to achieve perfection in their devotional service. Right? In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Mahatmanas Mam Partha Daivim Prakritim Ashritaha. So the Mahatmas, or who are engaged in pure devotional service, they put themselves under the shelter of this Daivi Prakriti, which is internal potency of the Lord, the Hladini Shakti of the Lord, Srimati Radharani. Of all the devotees, Srimati Radharani is the topmost devotee. Right? We see gradations in specifically in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, it's explained very nicely that there are different devotees who are on different levels, different sthai bhava, Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, and then Madhurya. In Madhurya level, then there are the queens of Dwaraka, who are the topmost. And then beyond that are the gopis. The queens of Dwaraka in the Swakiya bhava. The gopis are in Parakiya bhava, in paramour love of God. And among the gopis, then there are set of gopis who are most prominent. And among those set of gopis also, Srimati Radharani is the topmost. So she is the topmost devotee of the Lord. So devotional service means taking shelter of the topmost devotee of the Lord under the guidance of the acharyas and the spiritual master. So devotees are under the shelter, under the protection of Radharani. So in other words, devotional service is not an activity of the material world. It is directly under the control of Radharani. So being directly under the control of the internal potency of Krishna, devotional service attracts even Krishna himself. So we discussed this, that Krishna attracts everybody, but Radharani attracts Krishna also. She's Madan Mohan Mohini. And so therefore devotees who are under the shelter of Srimati Radharani, they also attract Krishna. So therefore Krishna becomes attractive, or rather the devotee becomes attractive to Krishna also. It attracts Krishna, Krishna Karshini. So if you remember, we discussed that Krishna means all attractive. Karshati iti Krishna. So he is the one who attracts everybody. But when a devotee in the level of prema, he attracts even Krishna because he has taken shelter of Srimati Radharani. So Krishna himself becomes attracted by a pure devotee. Okay, and he wants to render service to that devotee. So there are so many instances. Krishna doing service to Arjuna. Right? If we see from a broader perspective, none of the religion can understand when this concept of God who is serving his devotee. God means, you take Christianity or Islam or any other religion, God means the supreme being. Either he has form, he does not have form, that change is based upon what kind of religion is being followed. Then he is the Supreme Lord, he creates and he is meant to give happiness to us wherever we are. So therefore we pray to him so that he mitigates all our distresses and keeps ourselves happy. And that's about it. The first thing is there is no concept of service to the Supreme Lord for his own pleasure. Okay, that point is left. Then what to speak of the Lord himself serving the devotee out of affection for him. The devotee's service is so nice that Lord himself wants to become his devotee's devotee. So this is the topmost level of understanding. And that's why now if you see the picture of Bhagavad Gita, the first page, there itself Krishna is the charioteer and Arjuna is the warrior there. So where the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the whole of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna establishes himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in Bhagavad Gita, there itself, the position what he's taking the position of a charioteer. And then the warrior is there, who is being served by the Lord. Although in Bhagavad Gita, he established himself as the Supreme Lord. So this is the highest form of devotional service, where Krishna himself is attracted by his devotee. So Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna speaks to Uddhava and he says, "My dear Uddhava, you may know it from me that attraction I feel for devotional service rendered by my devotees is not to be attained even by the performance of mystic yoga, philosophical speculation, ritualistic sacrifices, study of Vedanta, the practice of severe austerities, or the giving of everything in charity. These are of course very nice activities, but they are not as attractive to me as the transcendental loving service rendered by my devotees." So Krishna, he agrees that devotional service is very attractive to me. I am attracted by it. But none of the other processes I am attracted to. Right. Then, how Krishna becomes attracted by the devotional service of his devotees is described by Narada in Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 10th chapter, verses 48 and 49. So, this is the portion where Yudhishthira Maharaj is appreciating Prahlad Maharaj. Right? This section of Krishna Karshini is Krishna is attracted to his devotee, and the Krishna's associates are also attracted to Krishna's pure devotee. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is speaking the glories of Prahlad Maharaj, saying how intense his devotional service was to the Lord, that the Lord was compelled to appear as Nrsimhadev and destroy all the obstacles that Prahlad Maharaj faced. So only for Prahlad, Nrsimhadev came. He did not come actually to kill even Hiranyakashipu. If he wanted to kill Hiranyakashipu, he could have done that by any of his agents. But Nrsimha's appear itself is to give pleasure to Prahlada Ahlada Daine. It is to give Ahlada, to give happiness to Prahlad, Nrsimhadev came. So Prahlada Ahlada Daine, Nrsimhadev came only to give happiness to Prahlad because he was attracted by Prahlad's devotional service. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is attracted to Prahlad Maharaj. And he is saying that Prahlad Maharaj is such a nice devotee that I am attracted to him. But what is the position of Yudhishthira Maharaj? He himself is the topmost Bhagavata. So he is attracted to another devotee. So Krishna Karshini means even the associates of Krishna, personal associates of Krishna, like Yudhishthira Maharaj, they are attracted to Prahlad Maharaj, who is also a devotee of the Lord. So they are attractive. Such an attraction is there. So Srila Prabhupada writes, a devotee always appreciates the activities of other devotees. A pure devotee never thinks himself great. He always thinks other devotees are greater than himself. The king was thinking, Prahlad Maharaj is actually a devotee of the Lord, while I am nothing. And while he was thinking like this, Narad Muni, he said that the Pandava brothers are the only fortunate people in the world, because the Supreme Lord has appeared on this planet and is presenting himself to you as ordinary human being. He's always with you in all circumstances. He's living with you, covering himself from the eyes of others. Others cannot understand he's the Supreme Lord, but still he's living with you as your cousin, as your friend, and even as your messenger. Therefore, you must know that nobody in this world is more fortunate than you, because Krishna is attracted to Yudhishthira Maharaj. In Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna appeared in his universal form, Arjuna prayed, My dear Krishna, I thought of you as my cousin brother, and so I have shown disrespect to you in so many ways, calling you Krishna or friend. But you are so great that I could not understand. Means the Lord has given himself to Arjuna, so that the position of Pandavas, so that was the position of the Pandavas. Although Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the greatest among all greats, he remained with those royal brothers, being attracted by their devotion and by their friendship and by their love. This is the proof of how great this process of devotional service is. It can attract even the Supreme Personality of Godhead. God is great, but devotional service is greater than God because it attracts him. People who are not in devotional service can never understand what great value there is in rendering service to the Lord. Right? So this ends our discussion on first chapter. Just to summarize, we have discussed only about the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service and have got an understanding of how it is. Now, the chapter 2 and chapter 3 will be seeing certain sets of definitions of certain terms, okay, and a little bit small elaboration on some of these topics. So, we have to concentrate here, because what we discuss in second and third chapter will be the basis for the further chapters. So you see, first chapter introduction spoke about the definition of pure devotional service. First chapter spoke about the characteristics of pure devotional service, and then this is going to speak about the Sadhana Bhakti. So you see, the first wave is complete now. First wave is complete. First wave is complete with the completion of chapter 1. So first wave was discussion about the general characteristics of Bhakti, Samanya Bhakti. And second wave is going to speak about Sadhana Bhakti. So before we see what is Sadhana Bhakti, we have to understand what Sadhana Bhakti is. What is the definition of Sadhana Bhakti? Okay, who is eligible to take up Sadhana Bhakti? What are the different aspects or different categories of Sadhana Bhakti? And then we'll come to the limbs or the angas or the processes which one must do to, or that should be the activity that one should do in Sadhana Bhakti. Okay, so from chapter 2 till chapter 16 will be Sadhana Bhakti. We are discussing about Sadhana Bhakti, but first 2 chapters, second chapter and third chapter, will give details on what Sadhana Bhakti is. And fourth chapter will have lots and lots of references speaking only about one specific point. Okay, so there's a very good elaboration of all the subject matters given by Srila Rupa Goswami. So this chapter we'll be seeing certain definitions. So I'll just see the division. I'll just read these divisions of this chapter. Okay, I can close this. I'll make it a little bigger. Yes, we'll see the divisions of this chapter, and after that we'll discuss the whole chapter. And again we'll come back to the division just to summarize. So that way all the topics will be easily etched in our mind. So first is the 3 categories of devotional service are mentioned: sadhana, bhava, and prema bhakti. Devotional service cannot be understood through dry logic and argumentation. So this Srila Rupa Goswami makes very clear, saying that what we are going to speak here, we don't bring in your own concept, your own understanding of what it is, and then try to speculate and try to find out something. This devotional service cannot be understood through dry logic or argumentation. Then he gives the definition of Sadhana Bhakti, of what actually Sadhana Bhakti. So in this chapter, we are going to see what is Sadhana Bhakti. And later we will see about Bhava and Prema Bhakti. So he gives the categories, 3 categories first, and then he says, let us see about Sadhana Bhakti. And within Sadhana Bhakti, there are 2 divisions, Vaidhi and Raganuga. And then he speaks about Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti first, and then Raganuga Sadhana will be discussed later. So you see, there is pure devotional service. Within that, there is Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, Prema Bhakti, these 3 categories. And then within Sadhana Bhakti, there is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And within Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, there are certain principles which one should follow. So that is from chapter 2 to 14. 15 and 16 will speak about Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So from chapter 2 to 16, it is Sadhana Bhakti in general. 2 to 14 is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, 15, 16 is Raganuga Bhakti, 17, 18 is Bhava Bhakti, and 19 is Prema Bhakti. So this is what we are going to see. So then Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti is first defined. The definition is given. How it's executed? By hearing and chanting and remembering the Lord. We will see a reference for this. Underlying principle is always remember the Lord and never forget Him. Right? Smartavya Satadam Vishnur, Vismartavya na Jatu Chit. Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti is applicable to all Varnas and Ashramas, so everybody is eligible. Result of Vaidhi Bhakti is one becomes happiness and peaceful within this world, and then he can also attain pure love of God. So, Srila Prabhupada writes, the three categories of devotional service which Srila Rupa Goswami describes are listed. Devotional service and practice, that is Sadhana Bhakti. Devotional service and ecstasy, Bhava Bhakti. And devotional service and pure love of Godhead, Prema Bhakti. There are many subheadings in each of these categories. Generally, it is understood that in the category of devotional service and practice, there are two different qualities. Devotional service and ecstasy are 4 qualities, and devotional service and pure love of Godhead has 6 qualities. These qualities will be explained by Rupa Goswami later on. So, this is what we discussed. That Kleshagni and Shubhada, these are 2 different qualities in practice. Then, we discuss this anyways. So there's this Mukshalabha and Sudurlabha for Bhava and Sadhanananda Visheshatma and Sri Krishna Krishna for Prema. So in this connection, Sri Rupa Goswami suggests that the person eligible for Krishna consciousness or devotional service can be classified by his particular taste. So this is the verse, and if you see, Swalpapi Ruchir Evasyad Bhakti Tatvava Bhotika Yuktistu Kevala Naiva Yadasya Apratishtata. Even if one has a little taste for the topic of bhakti, he can understand it. Swalpapi. Swalpa. Even if little taste one has, he can understand bhakti. He who tries to understand bhakti by dry logic cannot understand it because logic is insubstantial. Right? Yukti, by some ideas or some this thing, he cannot understand what is pure devotional service. And why does he say that? Because the activities of devotional service and the activities, normal activities that a person performs, there seems to be no difference in that. A person sweeping in the temple and a person sweeping in the road, activity is the same. It's the same activity of sweeping. Cooking is the same activity, either a devotee cooks or a non-devotee cooks. And endeavoring for constructing big houses, big temples for the Lord, it also seems to be the same activity. So by yukti, just by logic and argumentation, we can say, what is the difference? There's no difference here. The same activity being performed, the same senses are being used, it's the same sweep, it's the same broom, it's the same floor, the same thing we are sweeping. And what are we sweeping? We are sweeping only dust. Dust is coming in the temple also. Temple is also getting dusted. You say it's spiritual, but how is it spiritual? Dust is there, cobwebs are there. You have to remove all that. Cooking also, you are using the same vegetables, which you say only material, which is born from earth only. So what is the difference? By this yukti, we cannot understand what is devotional service. But one who has little faith, or little understanding of what devotional service is, he can take up to this pure devotional service process. Because these activities are done in relation to Krishna, therefore there is purification that happens. Although the activity is the same, but still there is purification. There is advancement towards spiritual life. We are uncovering the contamination within the heart. Cheto Darpana Mahajanam is happening. Correct? And Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam. As we progress through Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, Prema Bhakti, the intensity of happiness increases. Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam. So as the mirror in the heart is cleansed, then this bliss also increases. Right? So that's what we have been discussing. So these points cannot be understood by yukti, cannot be understood by logic. It's not possible to understand these things by logic. So one must have some taste for the topic of devotional service. So he says that devotional service is a continual process from one's previous life. No one can take devotional service unless he has some previous connection with it. Suppose in this life I practice devotional service to some extent, even though it is not 100%, whatever I have done will not be lost. There is always a continuity. Even if there is no continuity, if only by chance a person takes interest in pure devotional instruction, he can be accepted and can advance in devotional service. Some contact, and this contact can be Agyata Sukruti in the form of hearing the Hare Krishna Mahamantra being recited or chanted by a pure devotee, or partaking of prasadam. So these things, they start one's spiritual life. So that continuation then continues in the next life also. So the main point is being in connection, getting the connection to a pure devotee. That's what starts a conditioned soul's progress towards spiritual life. For persons who have a natural taste for understanding books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service is easier than those who are simply accustomed to mental speculation and argumentative processes. Why do we do this? Why do we do that? Why it is like this? Why it is like that? Keep on argumenting. Then they will not be able to take up devotional service. When we preach to somebody, then there are some people who, although are very intelligent and they tend to accept the principles of devotional service, but still they keep on asking questions. They keep on asking questions again and again and again and again and again. Although some questions have been answered, they will not be able to connect that. Okay, this question has already been answered, and whatever I'm asking now, it's connected, it's related to that. And I should take that answer as the base and then try to understand what is being given subsequently. That they will not do. They'll again come back to the same original point. Although materially they are very intelligent. So this process of argumentation is there subtly within the heart. So although good answers, convincing answers are being given, but still they keep on questioning the different processes. And the faith that is required to take up devotional service never appears within the heart. Right? I have experience of this with many people actually. When I was working with my colleagues, we used to invite them for these programs. Then they will come and they'll keep on asking questions. And all the questions have been answered satisfactorily and they also accept. But after a day, then again they come back to the similar kind of question. They cannot take the base. And then the next Sunday program, they say, oh, this I could not understand, that I could not understand, and this is not proper, that is not proper. And they again keep on asking more questions and questions, saying that it does not make any sense, although the answers are proper. And they did not take up devotional service. They just in the karmi lives only. Although they did get some contact with devotional service, but they could not take up because of this argumentative process. So some purity is required. Some bhagyavan, that fortune is required. Association with pure devotees is required. And that gives that faith, that instills that faith, that injects that faith in the heart of that person. And from there only he can develop his devotional service. Mere logic, argumentation will not work. Right? So, and Sri Rupa Goswami says that a person skillful in more logic will always defeat. Correct? In Mahabharata, this is one person is not considered rishi if he does not defeat the argument of another person. So, tarko apratishta shutayo vibhinna nasavrishiriyasya matam na bhinnam dharmasya tattvam nihitam govahayam mahajano yena gatasa pantha. So, just by argument one cannot understand. One has to understand by following the Mahajanas. Right. This is the same devotional service in practice, ecstasy and pure love of God. Then Tatra Sadhana Bhakti. So Sri Rupa Goswami starts his exposition on Sadhana Bhakti. And he gives the definition of Sadhana Bhakti. Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhava sa sadhana bhida nitya siddhasya bhavasya prakatyam hridi sadhyata. So this is a translation. This is the verse which is there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. When transcendental devotional service by which love for Krishna is attained is executed by the senses, it is called Sadhana Bhakti, or the regulative discharge of devotional service. Such devotion eternally exists within the heart of every living entity. The awakening of this eternal devotion is the potentiality of devotional service in practice. So that devotional service by which love for Krishna is attained, it is executed by the senses, is called as Sadhana Bhakti. So these are the 2 points. By which, by performing Sadhana Bhakti, one can come to Bhava Bhakti. That process by which, by performing something, one comes to Bhava Bhakti, that is called as Sadhana Bhakti, and it is executed by the senses, which means Hrishikena Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. You saw this one, Sarvabhadi Vinirmuktam Tatparaten Nirmalam, Hrishikena. Through our senses, we serve the master of senses. So Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Sadhana Bhakti means we use our senses to render devotional service, and by performing this Sadhana Bhakti, one can attain to Bhava Bhakti, to pure love of God. So what does devotional service in practice mean? Practice means employing our senses in particular type of work. Devotional service in practice means Different sensory organs are employed in service to Krishna. Some senses are meant for acquiring knowledge, some meant for executing the conclusion of thinking, willing, willing. We have this karmendriyas and jnanendriyas. So practice means employing both the mind and the senses in practical devotional service. So employing our present mind and senses in devotional service is called as Sadhana Bhakti, which will take us to Bhava Bhakti. So that is the definition of Sadhana Bhakti. Okay, so if it is asked in the test, you'll have to write these two. That it takes one to Bhava Bhakti and then it's executed by our senses. That's the definition of Sadhana Bhakti. Devotional service is not artificial. So this practice is not for developing something artificial. So the point which is being spoken here is that Sadhana Bhakti does not create something new. It does not create Bhava Bhakti. Okay. It's already there within the heart. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi Shravanadi Shuddha Chitta Karaye Uday. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Nitya Siddha. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema. The love for Krishna is already there within the heart. Sadhya Kabunoi. It is not something which has to be attained by any endeavor. Okay. It is not to be attained by anything. But Shravanadi Shuddha Chitta. By Shravana and Adi, which is the limbs, the angas of devotional service. By performing devotional service, then within the heart, the mirror is cleansed. And then Krishna Prem becomes Uday. Shravanadi Shuddha Chitta, Kareye Uday. Means the Krishna Prem rises in the heart just like a sun by cleansing the mirror of the heart. So Sadhana Bhakti is not to gain something new. It is basically to remove us from all the contaminations which is there. All the material contaminations. All the material modes which have entangled us. So Sadhana Bhakti relieves us from this contamination. So it's not something which we are gaining from outside. It's already there within the heart. Or it's just like this, no? We take a cloth and then we wipe the dust in the mirror. But that does not mean the cloth is creating the mirror. Correct? The mirror is already there. It is already clear and it can reflect a very nice image. But it's just that it is deposited with lots of dust. So the towel or the cloth is only removing that dust. It is not creating the mirror. The mirror is compared to pure love of God. It is already there in the heart. So nobody is creating love of Krishna in the heart. It's already there. You just have to clear the mirror. So Sadhana Bhakti is meant for that purpose. We are not creating something new in Sadhana Bhakti. Just like a child learns or practices to walk. So the tendency to the walking capacity is already there within the child and we just have to revive it. But if the capacity is not there, if the child is not born with that capacity, does not matter how much we try, the child will never be able to walk. Correct? One who is affected due to some medical condition, the child does not have the strength, the capacity to walk, it cannot walk. It does not matter how much practice he does. Similarly, just by practice, one cannot attain pure devotional service. We saw this, right? By external endeavors, by austerities, by becoming very austere. Oh, I want to become very austere. I want to completely detach myself from anything material. That is not the way to attain pure love of God. Sadhana Bhakti. So there's a balance, a fine balance that has to be maintained. That is the way of attaining pure love of God. And those things is what Srila Rupa Goswami describes here. Okay, so devotional service is the natural instinct of every living entity. And the consciousness, though lying dormant in those who are materially contaminated, is found in every living entity. And when purified, this is called Krishna Consciousness. Krishna Consciousness cannot arouse simply by practice. There are certain prescribed methods for employing our senses and mind in the way that a dormant consciousness for loving Krishna will be invoked. No basic walking capacity. Okay, one who has no basic walking capacity cannot walk by practice. Actually, there is no such practice. We wish to develop our innate capacity for devotional service, and by accepting and executing them will cause that dormant capacity to be invoked. Such practice is called Sadhana Bhakti. Right? So, Sadhana Bhakti means all these things. So you have to understand that Sadhana Bhakti is meant for reviving Bhava Bhakti. It is executed through our senses, and it is something which is not creating something new. It is only reviving that which is already present within our heart. It's invoking the dormant capacity. Right? Okay. So if an explanation of Sadhana Bhakti is asked, you will have to give all this, or whatever is written here. Srila Prabhupada continues, cure for madness of the conditioned living entity. Every living entity on the spell of material energy is held in an abnormal condition of madness. In Srimad Bhagavatam it is said, generally the conditioned soul is mad because he is always engaged in activities which are the cause of bondage and suffering. So one who indulges in those activities which can only give suffering is to be considered a crazy person, a mad person, or one who hurts himself. You say, what nonsense, why he's such a crazy person, he's doing like this. But we are also like that. So those who are engaged in mental activities, they are like this. So only by implication in mental activities has he become miserable, temporary, and full of ignorance. Otherwise, his original condition is joyful, blissful, eternal, and full of knowledge. Satchit Ananda. But here he is miserable, Nirananda, temporary, Asat, and full of ignorance, Achit. This is due to Vikarma. Vikarma means actions which should not be done. Right? Nunam pramattaha kurute vikarma. Yat indriya pritiya apnoti. Na sadhu manye. Like this. Nunam pramattaha. Pramattaha means mad. Nunam pramattaha is totally crazy, is totally mad. Such kind of people engage in vikarma. Nunam pramatta kurute. He does, what does he do? Vikarma. Activities which should not be done. Therefore, we must practice sadhana bhakti, which means to offer mangalarti in the morning, to refrain from certain mental activities, to offer obeisance to spiritual master, to follow many other rules and regulations, which will be discussed here one after another. So this is your 64 items of devotional service. So these practices will help one become cured of madness. So sadhana bhakti cures conditioned soul of his madness under the spell of maya, material illusion. So this is also one of the aspects of sadhana bhakti. So again, when we define sadhana bhakti, all these different aspects have to be explained. Okay. So Narad Muni mentions sadhana bhakti in the 7th canto. To King Vijay, he says, "My dear king, one has to fix his mind on Krishna by any means. Tasmat kenapyupayena mana Krishna niveshayet." One has to fix his mind on Krishna. So it's the duty of Acharya to find the ways and means for disciple to fix his mind on Krishna. So what are the ways and means? These are the angas of sadhana bhakti. And the main goal is just to fix one or fix his mind on Krishna. The authorized program is chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Why? Because this chanting has so much power, it immediately attaches one to Krishna. It's the beginning of sadhana bhakti. One has to fix his mind on Krishna. And the example is that Ambarish Maharaj, although a responsible king, fixed his mind on Krishna. And in this way, one will be able to make rapid progress in successfully reviving his original Krishna consciousness. So, the goal of sadhana bhakti is to always think of Krishna. Always keep him in his mind. One has to fix his mind on Krishna. So fixing one's mind on Krishna is the level of Samadhi. Right? I think we read that. Did we read that till now? I don't remember. I think it's coming. Either we have read it or it's coming. Fixing one's mind on Krishna is called a Samadhi. So even on the stage of sadhana bhakti, a devotee is considered to be on the level of Samadhi, which is the highest position of the yoga process, of Ashtanga yoga process. We have to keep the mind always fixed on Krishna. Dhyana vasatadgatena manasa. One's mind shall always be fixed on Krishna. So sadhana bhakti, one who takes up to pure devotional service, has already surpassed all the other paths, all the yogic paths, because he's already fixing his mind on Krishna continuously. Right. Okay. So, anyway, I think we will just skip this for lack of time. You can read this. Actually, I would suggest that you please go and read the purport of 7132. There, Srila Prabhupada mentions that this one and the next one, 7132 and 7133, where Srila Prabhupada gives, this is a section where, okay, I'll just give a brief intro to this. This is a section where Yudhishthira Maharaj is amazed that Shishupal, when he was killed by Krishna, he merged into the Lord. Although Shishupal was extremely envious. So how is it that Shishupal was able to attain the highest destination, although he was so inimical to the Lord? That was Yudhishthira Maharaj's question. And Narad Muni, he explains his answers. Okay, of how, although there are demons are inimical to the Lord, still they're absorbed in the Lord because of their intense concentration on thinking about Krishna. Okay, so how whether it's devotional service or not, we have already discussed this when we're discussing Sanyabhilasha Shunyam. But more nice explanation obviously is given by Srila Prabhupada in these purports to these set of verses. So that will give a very better understanding. Actually, we can do that, but then because of lack of time, we'll have to move on. So please, to get more details, you can go and read this purport to the set of verses starting from 7132. Okay. Then Srila Rupa Goswami speaks about the two categories of Sadhana Bhakti, Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti. Now Sadhana Bhakti is also divided into these two. The first part is called service according to regulative principles. So what is it? One has to follow regulative principles by the order of spiritual master or on the strength of authoritative scriptures. Right? There is no question of refusal. That is called Vaidhi or regulated. It comes from Vidhi. Vidhi means that which is the rules that one has to follow. So Vaidhi means the rules and regulations of devotional service. A regulated devotional service. One has to do it without argument. It means one cannot refuse and one has to do it without argument, and he has to follow the regulative principles on the order of spiritual master or the order of strength of authoritative scriptures. Another part of Sadhana Bhakti is called Raganuga. Raganuga refers to the point at which by following the regulative principles one becomes a little more attached to Krishna and execute devotional service out of natural love. For example, a person engaged in devotional service may be ordered to rise early in the morning and offer arati. In the beginning, one rises early in the morning and offers arati because of his order of the spiritual master. But then, over a due course of time, he develops real attachment. And when he gets his attachment, he automatically tries to decorate the deity, prepare different kinds of dresses and things of different plans to execute his devotional service nicely. Although it is within the category of practice, this offering of loving service is spontaneous. So he wants to do something for the Lord, not only as rituals, but out of spontaneous affection. So that is called as Raganuga Bhakti. So therefore it's regulative as well as spontaneous. Then, see, we are discussing Sadhana Bhakti. Within Sadhana Bhakti, Vaidhi and Raganuga. And now we are going to discuss about Vaidhi. So Vedhi Bhakti is defined when there is no attachment to or no spontaneous loving service, and one is engaged in the service to the Lord simply out of obedience to the order of spiritual master or in pursuance of the scriptures. Such obligatory service is called Vaidhi Bhakti. Means one thing is there is no attachment, there is no spontaneous loving sentiment, and one is engaged in service only out of obedience to what? To either the order of spiritual master or in pursuance of the scriptures. That is called as Vaidhi Bhakti. Right? So this is the definition of Vaidhi Bhakti. And Vaidhi Bhakti is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, first chapter, verse 5. The Shukdev Goswami is speaking to Parikshit Maharaj. My dear king, if you want to be fearless in meeting your death next week, for actually everyone is afraid at this point, then you must immediately begin the process of hearing and chanting and remembering God. So hearing, chanting and remembering. You see, we always have to fix our mind on Krishna. And that is possible by chanting Hare Krishna. That's what Srila Prabhupada said. And Srimad Bhagavatam is strengthening, or it is taking that. Sadhana Bhakti means you have to start hearing, the process of hearing, chanting and remembering. So that is Sadhana Bhakti by the order of the spiritual master. Who the spiritual master is? Shukdev Goswami. Right. So principle of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti is chanting, hearing and remembering Krishna. If one can chant Hare Krishna, chant and hear Hare Krishna and always remember Krishna, then he is sure to become fearless of death. Shukdev Goswami does not recommend the chanting and hearing about anybody or the demigods. The Mayavadis say chant any name, that of Krishna or demigods, and the result will be the same. But this is not a fact. According to authorities of Srimad Bhagavatam, one has to. Okay. Then this is the verse of Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma. Right? Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma, Bhagwan Ishvaro Hari, Shrotavya Kirtidaveshya, Spartaveshya Chichadabhyam. So it's Sarvatma. So this Srila Prabhupada explains that Sarvatma means super soul of everyone. Krishna is mentioned as Ishvara, supreme controller, who is situated in everyone's heart. So if some way or other we become attached to Krishna, he'll make us free from all danger. It is said that devotee is never vanquished. Name bhakta pranashyati, right? Shifan bhavati dharmatma, shashvat chanti negachyati. Kaunteya pratijanihi, name bhakta pranashyati. So devotee is never vanquished. Vanquished means he does not come out of the entanglement of birth and death and misses his golden opportunity. Such a person does not know where he is being thrown by the laws of nature in the 8,400,000 species of life, and his spiritual identity remains lost. He becomes a plant, beast, or bird in his next life. So Rupa Goswami says, somehow or other, we should apply our minds to Krishna very seriously, and thus also become fearless of death. After that, we do not know our destination because we are completely under the control of the laws of nature. But because the Lord, Krishna, is the control of laws of nature, then by fixing our mind on him, we can come out of this loss. A sincere devotee will surely be transferred to the abode of Krishna, as found in Bhagavad Gita. So, this is what we are supposed to do. Smartavya satatam Vishnu, vismartavya nijatuchit, sarva vidhi nishedasyor, eteyor eva kinkaraha. One should always remember Vishnu and never forget him. All injunctions and prohibitions are dependent on these two principles. So, this is called dhyana, which is always remembering the Lord Vishnu. It is said that one has to meditate with his mind fixed upon Vishnu. Padma Purana recommends that one always fix his mind on this form of Vishnu by meditation and not forget him at any moment. And this state of consciousness is called Samadhi. Yes, so this is what I was referring to. This is called a Samadhi. We should always try to mold the activities of our lives in such a way that we constantly remember Vishnu or Krishna. That is Krishna consciousness. Padma Purana recommends, somehow or other, always think of Vishnu without forgetting him under any circumstances. This is the most basic of all regulative principles. For when there is an order from a superior about doing something, there is simultaneously a prohibition. When the order is that one should always remember Krishna, the prohibition is that one should never forget him. Within the simple order and prohibition, all regulative principles are found complete. So regulative principles of devotional service should be done with this consciousness of always thinking about Krishna. Tasmat, what is it? Krishna says to Arjuna that you should fight, but always think of me. Vidyasva Vigata Chura. That's the verse. Skipped my mind again. Okay, we'll continue. Okay, one thing that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says this, Satatam here means every day, not every second, since continuous remembrance would be impossible to do in Sadhana Bhakti. This would produce loss of faith in the rules of Bhakti because they would be impossible to follow. So Sadhana Bhakti means we still have material contamination. Although the goal is pure devotional service, we are engaging in the activities of pure devotional service, still there is material contamination and one may not be able to remember the Lord continuously. Satatam, not possible. Smartavya satatam Vishnu. No one may not be able to remember him at each and every second. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur very mercifully says, Satatam means every day. Every day he remembers the Lord and he continues his practice of devotional service, and that itself will purify him. This regulative principle is applicable to all varnas and ashramas, the castes and occupations of life. Correct? So, Sri Rupa Goswami says, everyone within and outside the varnashrama system should always follow this rule concerning worship of the Lord. Though it is always to be followed as a daily duty according to scriptures, the scriptures also ascribe attractive material results for observing it, as is the case of Yashua. So, we'll concentrate on this. So, Rupa Goswami says, everyone within and outside the varnashrama system should always follow this rule concerning worship of the Lord. So, this is the principle of Sadhana Bhakti. If you remember, we discussed that pure devotional service does not have any aspect of varnashrama system within that. Pure devotional service is above varnashrama system. But varna and ashrama, there are activities which are to be performed within varna and ashrama. So when we speak about varna ashrama, in one sense, strictly speaking about the Vedic varna and ashrama, it is only following the karma kanda activities which is mentioned in the Vedas. There are varnas, brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, shudras, and then there is brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha and sannyasi. This is varna and ashrama. And there are specific set of duties which are mentioned in the dharma shastras. Which one follows? Okay. So just following these prescribed duties of varna and ashrama does not constitute devotional service. It is not bhakti. Okay. But varna, the prescribed duties of varna and ashrama, when they are carried out in connection with Krishna, then these activities also become part of devotional service. So when varna and ashrama are carried out, the duties of varna and ashrama are done with Krishna, fixing one's mind on Krishna, then these become the limbs of devotional service. Okay. So Varnashrama is not totally rejected, but Daivi Varnashrama is propagated. If we see in Srimad Bhagavatam, when we speak about devotees, we are not speaking about those Babajis who are completely renounced. Correct? We are speaking about Brahmanas who became pure devotees. We speak about the great Kshatriyas. Yudhishthir Maharaj is there, Prahlad Maharaj is there, Dhruva Maharaj is there, Ambrish Maharaj is there. Right? So we are speaking about all these great kings. So they are within Varnashrama system. Prithu Maharaj is there, they're within Varnashrama system. But how did they carry out their day-to-day activities, their prescribed duties of Kshatriya, but still they are considered as pure devotees of the Lord. So they did not stop doing their Varna and Ashrama duties, but they dovetailed this Varna and Ashrama duties only for the pleasure of the Lord. And this is explained, actually, Prabhupada explains that here in Nectar of Devotion, how the Kshatriya engages his prescribed duties as a service to the Lord. How a Brahmana can do, how a Vaishya does, and how a Shudra does. And what to speak of those in Varna and Ashrama, even Rakshasas can also take up devotional service, like Vritrasura was there. So Bhakti, in one way, is completely transcendental to any material position that a living entity may be in. Okay. But Varna and Ashrama is a very wonderful or nice vehicle where one can situate himself according to his guna in a specific Varna and according to his materialistic tendencies in a specific ashrama and continue practicing devotional service, sadhana bhakti, and ultimately attain bhava bhakti and then prema bhakti also. Okay. So, to regulate our activities, the principles of varna ashrama plays a very important role where one can situate, one can understand who he is. Who he is means in the material sense, to which varna he belongs to and what all his duties are, and performs his duty for the pleasure of Krishna. Then Brahmana is there. What is his duties? Patan Patan, Yajan Yajan, Dan Pratigraha, like this. So Patan Patan, means he reads, he studies, and then he teaches. So he can study about Krishna and he can teach about Krishna. Right? That's pure devotional service. And he's engaging his propensity in devotional service to Krishna. So his Varna and Ashrama duties are involved. Patan Patan, Yajan Yajan, means doing sacrifices for oneself and for others. So he can do Sankirtan, he can do Sankirtan Yajna, or he can do sacrifices for oneself and also for devotees, the fire sacrifices. Then Dan and Pratigraha, he has to give charity and he has to accept charity. So he can give charity for the cause of Krishna consciousness. Correct? The Kshatriyas are there. Kshatriyas have to protect the citizens and make sure that everybody is happy. How they can do? By propagating Krishna consciousness, by propagating Krishna conscious activities. So that way he can make sure all the varnas are maintained properly, everybody is engaged in devotional service, and then a Kshatriya is also supposed to do lots of sacrifices and give charity. So that also he can do in Krishna conscious way. A Vaishya similarly can engage his activities. What is activities he does? Krishi Goraksha Vanijyam. So grains he has to cultivate. That can be done. Grains he can cultivate, distribute it among the devotees who are there, and then they can offer bhoga and then partake of it. Right? He's cultivating it only for service of the Lord. The grains and other vegetables that he cultivates. Krishi Goraksha, cow protection, directly connected to Krishna. Vanijyam, banking, so that everything is smooth. And there is no economic problems within the society, so that everybody is peaceful to prosecute their Krishna consciousness. And Shudras, because all the other three Varnas are engaged in devotional service by performing their prescribed duties, the Shudras, by serving them, also makes advancement in devotional service. Because he's serving Vaishnava. All his propensity is only to serve. So that way, Varna and Ashrama system itself becomes an Anga of Bhakti, or so many activities which are performed within Varnashrama institution, it becomes an activity of devotional service. So, that's why he says that within and outside, everyone within Varnashrama and outside the Varnashrama system also should always follow this rule concerning worship of the Lord. So those who are outside of Varnashrama, Bhagavad Gita says, Yat karoshi, yat ashnasi, yat juhosi dadasi, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushama darpanam. Whatever you do, whether it's prescribed duty, it's not a prescribed duty, yat karoshi. Whatever you do it as an offering to me. So even if you're outside of Varnashrama system, still you can become a devotee. Yesterday, during Ramana, we saw this drama, no? This Nishada, Guha was there. He's outside the Varnashrama system. But still, he's the greatest devotee of the Lord. Therefore, it's possible. This is what Rupa Goswami is saying here. Right? So there are four Varnas, namely the Brahmanas, Vaishyas, Kshatriyas and Shudras. And regulative principles are not only for Brahmacharis. It doesn't matter. No, these are basically principles which we can go through. So I'll not spend much time on this. Yeah, so the remembering of the Supreme Lord, constantly not forgetting Him, is to be followed by everyone without fail. One should not say that I'm in Grahastha Ashram, I have so many duties to perform, I have my familial duties, I have to maintain a wife, I have to maintain my children, I have to go for economic conditions, I have to maintain my family economically also, so therefore I have to go out, work, do this, that and all. But still, all that will degrade if one is not fixing his mind on Krishna. But it's not done for Krishna conscious purpose. One can go out and work, and in work, it's not possible to remember Krishna. But then the activities or the fruit of this work can be engaged in Krishna conscious activities, giving charity for temple, this, that, and all, for preaching Krishna consciousness like this. And that way, the work can be dovetailed in Krishna consciousness. That's the concept of karma yoga. But the best is, of course, to always think about Krishna and never forget Him. But even if that is not the case, but still, somehow or other, tasmat kenape prakarana mana Krishna nivesh. Somehow or other, our activity should be molded into Krishna conscious activities. So that's the understanding. Okay. And then this is given. A reference is given that all the 4 varnas and all the 4 ashramas, they have come from the form of from the body of the universal form. Right? Brahmanas have come from the head, Kshatriyas have come from the arms, Vaishyas from the waist, Shudra from the legs, Sannyasis from head, Vanaprasthas from arms, Grihasthas from waist, Brahmacharis from legs. Therefore, everyone in Varna and Ashrama institution is meant to serve the Lord because they're part and parcel of the Lord. As different parts of the body have different types of activities, so the social and spiritual orders also have different types of activities in terms of qualification and position. यथातुरोर मूल निषेचनेन तृप्यते स्कंद भुजोपशाखा प्राणोपहाराश्च वेतेन्द्रियाणम सर्वात्मना hari achyuteja. I think that's the verse. Anyways, so this is that just like a tree is nourished by watering the root, the body is nourished by giving food to the stomach. Similarly, by performing one's varna and ashrama duties, one has to please the Supreme Lord. And then everything is maintained. All the varnas and ashramas are maintained very nicely. The target is always the Supreme Lord. Everyone must be engaged in particular duty, but the perfection of such work should be tested by how far the Lord is satisfied with such activities. Correct? Atha pumbir sheshra varnashrama vibhagashah swanushtitasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. Atha pumbir dvija shrestha varnashrama vibhagashah. One must engage in varnashrama activities. Swanushtitasya dharmasya, situated in his own prescribed duty, and samsiddhir haritoshanam, with a constant check, with the understanding that ultimately these activities are meant for satisfying Hari. Samsiddhir haritoshanam. Srila Prabhupada speaks about the duties of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Okay, so we can read that. Right. So satisfaction. So one can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as a result, such satisfaction, the whole society gets all the necessities of life amply and without difficulty. The whole society performs its prescribed duties, then there is no doubt that one can live peacefully and happily. The results of Vaidhi Bhakti are stated. That all persons engage in activities, whether those indicated in the revealed scriptures or ordinary worldly activities, if by the result of either of such activities they worship me in Krishna consciousness, then automatically they become very happy within this world as well as in the next. Of this, there is no doubt. So there is happiness within this world also, and obviously he goes back home, back to Godhead. So thus this Krishna movement, Krishna conscious movement is so nice. There is no need even of designating oneself Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. Let everyone be engaged in whatever occupation now he has. Simply let him worship Lord Krishna by the result of his activities in Krishna consciousness. That will adjust the whole situation, and everyone will be happy and peaceful within this world. In Narad Pancharatra is mentioned that any activity sanctioned in the revealed scriptures aiming at satisfaction of the Supreme are accepted by saintly teachers as the regulative principles of devotional service. Right? Any activity which is aimed at satisfaction of the Supreme Lord is considered as Sadhana Bhakti, regulative principles of devotional service. If one regularly executes such service under the Supreme Personality of Godhead, under the direction of bona fide spiritual master, then gradually he rises to the platform of serving in pure love of God. So, every activity should be aimed at satisfying of the Supreme, and that way every activity becomes pure devotional service, Sadhana Bhakti. Okay, so just to go back to the divisions, the chapter completes here. So just see the divisions again. What do we discuss? We discuss the three categories of devotional service: sadhana bhava, prema. Try argumentation and logic will not work to understand devotional service. Definition of sadhana bhakti: Vaidhi and Raganuga. Vaidhi sadhana bhakti definition we saw: execute by hearing, chanting, and remembering the Lord. Underlying principle is always remember the Lord, never forget Him. Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is applicable to all varnas and ashramas and even those outside of varna and ashrama. The result is happiness and peaceful within this world, and finally attaining pure love of God. This sadhana bhakti will also take one to bhava and prema. Okay, so it's already time, so we'll not be able to start this third chapter. So tomorrow we will. The fourth chapter I'll probably not discuss. Maybe the fourth chapter has around 60 verses. Sorry, 29 verses. Most of it are references. Most of it is only references saying how impersonal liberation is very insignificant compared to pure devotional service. So in this class, I may not read through all those references. That's for your own reference to study. So fourth chapter, we'll skip certain portion, or rather major portion of 22 verses. We'll just skip through. And then we will see last 4-5 verses, there are some specific points which are being mentioned. So we will study that. So tomorrow we'll be able to third, fourth, and fifth as well. Okay, so 3, 4, and 5 will complete tomorrow. 6th and 7th we will do on Wednesday. Okay, and 8, 9, and 10 probably on, 8 and 9 on Thursday, 10 and 11 on Friday, and 12 on Saturday. So like that, the plan is that we will try to complete 12th chapter by this week. So if we are able to do that by Friday, good, or else we'll have a session on Saturday as well. Right. Do you have any questions on what we discussed today? Okay, so stop. Srila Prabhupada ki, Nectar of Devotion ki.